Well, hello everyone. This is Bobby Beals here in Santa Fe, New Mexico. We're at the Horseshoe Gallery at Bishop's Lodge and on Tesuque Pueblo land here, recording an interview with one of my favorite, intelligently creative art dealers I've come across in person, my friend Marcia McCoy. Marcia, I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. Thank you, Bobby.
It's-
I do have to return the favor. As I said to David, and he can confirm this, Bobby Beals is a next generation or two behind me, we're not quite sure, a renegade. And I like his style, and I like his eye for art, and I like his courage. But with all of that, without further ado, I would like to introduce one of my favorite people, David Parks.
David.
Hello, this is David, and I appreciate your interest in my work. And Marcia and I have known each other for a long time back in New York in the good old days, and really appreciate knowing her. And I look forward to working with you, Bobby, and ask me anything you would like. I'm open for everything.
I'm so glad you said that. So, you know, when you talk about the good old days and during the era that you and Marcia knew each other, what kind of music was playing, and what were you all into musically?
Marcia, you want to go first?
Oh, I think you have a lot of New York stories, including Bob Dylan. And all of the blues and jazz players. Your stories are far more interesting than mine, David. I yield to you.
Well, that's not exactly true, but David, please share.
Well, I spent 30 years in New York City. Grew up there and experienced a lot of good music, great music. Knew Bob Dylan and Richie Havens, and I did a lot of hanging out with Miles Davis and Mago Santa Maria. I mean, it was a very good period of time, 50s and 60s of good music. So that being said, the art, of course, Metropolitan Museum, the Frick, Museum of Modern Art, all that was part of my education into art. And hung out with my father, Gordon Parks, and we played a lot of jazz at his place and a lot of classical. So I grew up on that too.
That sounds amazing. When you were at the MoMA or you go to the Frick, would you run into other musicians, photographers? Was it that bohemian vibe inside the museums, or was it quite different?
Well, there were a lot of photographers around, a lot of artists and so on. I did, go to various openings of galleries of people's work, and I would run into various people in the business, and it is a business, and so yeah, I ran into a lot of people. New York is filled with art and communications art. Grew up in France, spent about 3-4 years there studying the French culture, and that is totally art. The whole culture is art. Too much art.
I love Paris, and when I was there, I saw the Gare de Lyon, and I was just blown away, and it finally found a heartbeat that resonated with me, coming from Santa Fe. But I did spend some time in New York, and it was so vibrant and robust with creative people. And so it sounds like you've had kind of a couple playgrounds to really find your most artistic self. You were born in Minnesota, right?
Yeah, I was born in St. Paul. Dad and most of the family had moved to New York to set up a residence there, but I was born, and about 3 or 4 weeks after I was born in St. Paul, or Minneapolis, same thing, we left. So I didn't spend that much time as a child there, just about 3 weeks, and went on to live in New York and in and out of New York for 30 years.
Sure.
Spent a lot of time in LA working on movies, learning the movie business.
You know, I love that I looked at your resume for quite some time, just kind of studying a little bit of your history and seeing these documentaries and feature films that you've worked on as a director. You know, looking through the lens, your father kind of pioneered photography of that time, and it was still photography for quite some time. And then you started to move that photo and really time travel with your perspective. I love the evolution of that from father to son, and how you've managed to go into the directorship and use those kind of commercials and film production experience and writing to the work. It seems like the seed was planted and you gave it a lot of water and sun to watch it bloom. When did you start getting into film or documentaries?
Well, I got into still photography early in my life. I worked as my father's assistant from the time I was like 12 or 10 or 12, and traveled around working as his assistant and carrying his bags and lights and
Did you ever make a big mistake helping him?
Well, if I did, he didn't say anything.
Oh.
But no, we you know, my brother and I worked with him a lot. We traveled with him when he was doing stories, and you know, in the old days at Life, they didn't supply you with an assistant, so you had to, you know, bring your assistant with you. So he picked Gordon Jr. and myself. You know, we worked with him on a lot of assignments. Oh God, I wouldn't even know where to start. But worked as his assistant when we lived in France. He was photographing Eisenhower, and I went with him on that one, and other artists, Picasso, stuff like that. Had the pleasure of meeting him and his son and family, and you know, just all over the place. I think if you were to put it together, I spent about I've been around the world at least twice, you know, except for communistic countries, and photographed in the Middle East, photographed in the Far East, Europe, Switzerland. You know, it goes on. I worked on film in Europe. I worked for De Sica in Rome on a film he was shooting as an assistant, production assistant, and unfortunately he died during the production, so that film never completed. But I worked, as I said, I worked on a lot of film. I worked around John Voight and John Earl, who just died, James Earl Jones.
Amazing actor.
Oh God, absolutely incredible actor. One of my best best friends of all time. We worked on the Great White Hope, and it was incredible. And oh God, we did Shaft, we did Superfly. My brother and I made Superfly.
Amazing, amazing movie.
We pulled a coup there. We did it for $350,000 in New York City, and that's unheard of.
Wow, y'all must have had a lot of friends.
Oh, a lot of good. Yeah, they're friends. They were friends. They were, you work on a film, they're family, man. You know,
Right.
Your crew is family. You don't go any further than that. And
I love that. I think that you've had several families in your life. If we kind of rewind time, I mean, I do want to talk about GI Diary.
Sure.
But if we rewind time and kind of go back to your military service,
Right.
you began the 2-year tour in 1965 in the U.S. Army, including 8 months in the Vietnam War, for which you were awarded 2 Purple Hearts. And when by the way, Marcia has been subtly introducing Gordon Parks and then David Parks, and then I've opened my repertoire of understanding works of art through this, through the photos, through these books, and through and looking up, like, okay, what is this? And it was the most influential book about Vietnam written. And that is said over 10 times when I Google this book and look at it. So, you had that family, I suppose, when you were in active duty.
Oh yeah, I don't know if you've been in the military, but
I have not.
you do become bonded with your fellow soldiers, and I was rather lucky to get out of there alive, but I was lucky. Okay, so
Yeah.
and the book has done well. I'm proud of it. David Haberstrand, who was the foremost authority on war and military, honored me by saying in a article for Harper's Review that he felt that it was the most authentic book on war that's ever been produced, and I really appreciated his comments. And Marcia, it's in that package, Harper's review next to the New York Times.
Right, excuse me, Bobby. Right, David, I provided that entire package that you had provided to Bobby, and he has that.
Okay,
And he's gone thoroughly through that and printed, so just a little excerpt, he has that material, and it looks extremely well done, so thank you, David.
Thank you. My pleasure. We're in the process of trying to get funds for a documentary on the book entitled GI Diary Revisited.
Yes.
Where I'm going to go back to Vietnam and go through the various places I was at and discuss what was going on at that time on camera, and then integrate it with the PBS show that aired here in Wichita, Kansas, that they did on me, and I'm going to intercut the show and my return in the documentary.
I really love this idea, and I'm going to read a quick boilerplate from this for those listening that have read the book or have not read the book. This is something that I think I would highly encourage pursuing, looking into as David has really put forth his reality into this book. So it would be cool to see this documentary made. And I'm going to start here. It says, GI Diary was the first book written about the Vietnam War that was published by a major publisher, Harper & Row. The Library of Congress displayed it as one of the most important pieces of work on the Vietnam War. The World War I Museum also agreed and gave it recognition in its 2020 show in the Kansas City Museum World War I Anniversary Celebration. David says, what I'll attempt to show in this film is the reality of war in Vietnam, a different kind of combat, guerrilla warfare. It is taken from a diary my father, Gordon Parks, suggested I keep to take my mind off the boredom of military life and lack of action during boot camp. I had no idea it would be published until I got back from Nam. I will have some add-ons in the film, when necessary, that have meaning. GI Diary is a historically correct film and will be filmed as such using documented film by the network's PBS Kansas. Of my book, David Parks will be filmed, retracting his footsteps in Vietnam 6 years later, intercut with a PBS interview. So it's really excited, and this returning to Vietnam to film live there, I imagine is some sort of Siddhartha journey. It's a return to oneself.
Yeah, people look at me and say, "Are you crazy?"
Yeah.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah. All the crazy people are my favorites. So, well, I really commend you to that.
Thank you.
I think it's a very worthy and great honor to be able to do that as well. And speaking of returning to oneself, this photo that is of your father on horseback that was taken is such a striking photo.
Thank you.
Yeah, do you remember what you shot it with? What type of camera?
Yeah, it's a Nikon F. Okay.
Okay.
I believe it was I had a number of different kind of cameras that I used when I shot film, publicity and promotional stuff on film. But I had Nikons, and Dad liked that photograph of him. It was shot on a film called Leadbelly. And if you haven't seen it, you should. It's one of the best films he made. And Paramount produced it, and they hired me to be a troubleshooter on production and also a promotional photographer for promoting the film. Dad liked it so much that he put it in the Half Past Autumn book that was published on his life. So it's the first photograph you see as you open the book. He did, and Gordon Jr. and I always, and Tony, my sister, he always asked us to do his photographs for his books. He's done about 18 or 19 books. So we had a number of various books that we did his photographs for. But he really liked that one. He as I said, they used it in the Half Past Autumn book.
Yeah, and it's such a beautiful book, and I love the negative space that's in that.
Can I say something?
Please.
David, I just have to validate that when I was organizing an exhibition for Gordon Parks, I asked him what photograph he would like when you came into an exhibition of his art, and he pulled your photo and gave me one and said he loved this photo because you captured him going all the way back to Fort Scott, growing up on a ranch in the Flint Hills, or farm and ranch. And he thought you totally captured him, and he loved that it you also captured him directing a film on horseback. So, and he was confused. He thought it was shot in Fort Scott, but we talked about that.
And I understand why. I mean, he's been photographed so many times that it's hard to stay up on top of, that photograph. I don't even know if he ever asked me where I took it.
I know, but I just wanted to validate that your father, it was his number one favorite photograph of himself.
It is him. We grew up on horses. He grew up on a ranch in Kansas, on the prairie and Flint Hills, and we were around horses a lot when I was growing up. We had horses outside of New York. We lived outside of New York in the suburbs, and he loved horses. Gordon Jr. went on after Superfly. He directed that. Started a horse ranch outside of L.A. in which is Topanga Canyon, which is now overrun by houses. They're still there after the fire. But Gordon Jr. had a horse ranch. He trained quarter horses. So he loved horses, and of course, that was his trademark. So.
When you were asked to do Buffalo Soldiers and 9th Cavalry Memorial, you are already familiar with horses, so that was easy for you, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. I mean, I lived in San Antonio for 3 years working on that project.
Wow.
I was trying to raise about $5 million to do the feature film, but I wasn't able to do it. But I went on a number of excursions with the memorial soldiers that represent their image every year, and various things, parades, stuff like that. And they're San Antonio is an incredible place. That's another iconic place to talk about. But I learned a lot about the Buffalo Soldiers there. That's where they originally trained. It's where the 9th originally trained. So
it's so fascinating. We're here in New Mexico, and there's a rich history of African American cowboys that of ranching, and that has just pioneered all of ranch life out here in the Southwest. And Gordon, your father, definitely paved some ways for you guys in the African American art world with Life magazine and publishing, and you had to make your own waves in the art world, and do what you did with this book and producing. It seems like you were always creating something. You liked something and you just went for it. There's some bravery in there.
That's kind of like my nature. I tend to do things that I like, and I don't stop until I do it, get it done right. I really enjoyed working for the magazines as a freelance photographer in New York. One of the things that I'm most proud of, that I spent 20 years working in the magazine business and survived in New York City.
Yes.
Paid the rent, and that's one of the things I'm really proud of, because I had to really hump. I really had to. But I enjoyed it. I worked for Look magazine and did some work with Life, and I did some work with various magazines when they produced them. And that's what happened in early 70s. The magazines went out of business, and so I had been working on film as a special photographer, and I decided to go full-time photographing on various films. My father, my brother, Martin Ritt, you name it, tremendous director. I actually started working on films before my father and brother did. Back in '62, I worked on Walk on the Wild Side, which was a film Ed Dmytryk did with Jane Fonda and Capucine and Lawrence Harvey out in L.A., and I worked on that. I worked as an assistant to the director as a gopher.
So when you went back to talk about that experience, your face was probably so lit up that they had to do some of that too.
Yeah.
I have this.
I got the bug working on that film.
Okay. I'm going to have to watch that film.
Welcome. And that film is famous for, number one, it was the first soundtrack that went viral. I mean, that went big time. All the soundtracks that lead songs of film up until that time were kind of normal, but that particular Walk on the Wild Side went big time. And that's when movies started to use the lead song to promote the movies.
Oh, I love that. I loved also when Isaac Hayes came in to do the soundtracks as well. And Gordon Parks is, your father's done a lot of soundtracks, symphonies, and when Marcia came forward to tell me about the work she's been doing with your father, she said, it's just a little light reading. And 32 books later, symphonies later, a whole catalog of photos and museum exhibits. I was like, what did I get myself into? But I feel the same with you. And regarding your time in New York that you mentioned, I'm going to pull up this Del Lemon article in the Austin American Statesman.
Right.
And he starts off. And he says, when local amateur David Parks was growing up in New York's posh Westchester County, there were no country clubs that would have blacks as members. So, the son of pioneering author, photojournalist, and filmmaker Gordon Parks postponed golf for 4 decades until he moved to Austin. Here he gravitated to other sports, baseball, tennis, and snow skiing, all the while heeding the advice of his father, keep your mind busy. When I read that, it's just so fascinating, and it really kind of captures what you're expressing to us in your endeavors.
Yeah, I mean, the old man was a very wise man. He is considered in New York City and Paris as the Renaissance man of New York. And I mean, I'm kind of like him. If I like something, I get into it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So he got into writing, and he got into books, and got into music, and he got into art. His latest work that he did was, which you can see in Half Past Autumn in the rear, that Marcia promotes and sells his artwork is incredible.
It really is.
It's absolutely gorgeous stuff, and it's kind of hard for the media and other people, critics and all that, to really recognize it for what it is, because his work at Life magazine with his photojournalism is so powerful, they can't see beyond that work. Even the foundation doesn't promote his art as much as they could.
sorry, it happens quite often in the art industry where certain works by artists are unrecognized, you know, and this is your body of work. These are for artists, their children, you know, and so to have them judged so severely is wonderful because it refines us, but it's also, it speaks to what what art has really reached a broader audience. And with this other work, it speaks to who it is connecting with. And I believe that work like this will connect to a broader and broader audience over time. It's just that, you know, I always say some people aren't ready for this one. Sometimes I feel that way. But I think what people are ready for is this turn to individualism, this turn to better self, this turn to healing, you know, and again, going back to this photo you took, that is just amazing. The photo, for those listening, and we'll post it online, but it is of Gordon Parks, and he's got a pipe in his mouth that is dangling so casually, and he's on a horse. We're not sure what the horse's name is, I don't believe, but he's got a hat that is kind of like a Stetson, but it's curled up on the sides, and he has a rain poncho, so it must have been raining. David framed this photo really well, where the bottom of the horse's bit, there's a couple inches showing below that, and then a couple inches above Gordon's hat, there's like an inch of space there. Marcia was very integral in connecting Robert Ehrlichman, who's a master printer. You talk about magazines, and this is someone.
Yeah, he's very good.
He's very good. He's the master printer that Marcia curated to get this photo printed. And Marcia, how was that experience for you, working with Robert and David on getting this piece out into the world?
Well, as I had mentioned earlier, Gordon specifically asked me to use this image in his exhibition of his artwork, and he gifted me one. It was kind of a bit in tatters. It had probably been in the house for quite a while in the stack with other things. But he told me it was his favorite photograph and that David Parks, his son, had taken it. And of course, you and I had met many times, David, because he gifted this later in his life when he was 90. But what happened is then when we were starting to produce the materials for the traveling exhibition, I obviously didn't want to give up my original to go on tour. So I called you and asked you if you had another one so I could purchase one for the show and keep mine for myself. And you had informed me that over a period of time that you weren't even sure where the negative was, that it had kind of been lost. And of course it was the 60s, so there was a lot going on. So we took it to Robert Ehrlichman to see if he could reconstruct it with your vision intact. And Robert, being the master printmaker that he is, with your permission, he brought it back to life. And the whole reason I wanted this image, in addition to Gordon's wish, is it's a damn good photograph, and I felt like you had captured his spirit. And a lot of New Yorkers, I mean, Gordon was in New York for 60 years or more, didn't realize his roots in Fort Scott on the ranch. And so I felt like you captured the director as well as the roots from Fort Scott. So that's how the piece came about. And I think you said it was maybe the best print ever of that work.
Well, Jesus. After the early 70s and the technology in printmaking, for example, and reproduction, let's put it that way, reproduction took a big turn. That word is called digital.
Yes.
You can take a photograph from a newspaper, okay? Digitize it, bring it to life, and it would almost look like a perfect print, a perfect reproduction. The technology is so far beyond where the negative was the only thing that you could use prior to the 70s.
That's true.
Well, and everything for example, I sent you some some video, YouTube stuff on my work, right?
Yes, I have that. I don't know if Bobby has.
Yes, I do.
Okay, great.
Okay. If you see photographs in there that you want to use, for example, you could digitize that. Robert could go right into that video, digitize it, and make a one-to-one print.
This is such a hot topic these days with AI coming in, and I really think that these humans are creating these digital experiences to try and create more human experiences, and so we have this ability that someone like Robert, he's not a sole digital guy. I mean, this person.
No. I'm just saying if he had to.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, he'd rather have the negative.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But he handed me his business card and told me to hover my phone over it, and it was augmented reality where his business card started to speak to me. And this is someone that understands the lab with his eyes closed, literally in the dark room, knowing how to do something. So it's really cool to see the cross between what you've done with the negative and then digital. And thank goodness you had this print and able to use it. And it's a great photo. And I'm happy to release this limited edition of this photo.
Thank you.
And it's exciting because I think dearly who would collect this. And I know that a lot of people want it, yet, how is it going to shine in their house, and how are they going to use it? How are they going to be inspired? I think visual artists like yourself and your family really are sharing a perspective of the world through this creativity and these extensive resumes to really showcase what life is for you. And
but understand one thing from my point of view is that photography is a reproduction of a moment of time.
Yes.
Otherwise, that particular time will never exist again to take a photograph of.
That is beautiful.
So it's a reproduction, okay? People say, well, why don't you do some arty stuff? I don't do arty art stuff because the camera to me is a one-to-one relationship with the moment of time, stopping a moment of time, reproducing a moment of time. And all the photographers, they have this photographic genre going where images are manipulated, and editing and processing and all that. They call it photographic art, you know, and it's good stuff. I mean, it's not. It's the stuff you see of mine are taken from stories that I had published. Everything you see on those YouTube stuff, that work was published. And that's the only thing that I really want to do is show work that was published by the magazines, newspapers, or whatever. That's my interest. I'm not an artsy person, okay? But there is a lot of graphic design that I studied at Rochester Institute of Technology and learned the art of design integrated into the photograph of a photojournalist, a photogenic.
Definitely.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of composition in that photograph. It's just not a photograph boom. It's manipulating the camera to look, to give it a more graphic and artistic look, but it's still a photograph of reproducing the moment of time.
It's beautifully done, and we do see that composition and design into what you do.
There is a story behind that photograph.
Please. You knew I'd ask that.
Well, that photograph was taken on the set of Leadbelly, and it was taken of Roger Mosley. No, excuse me. It was a film that Roger Mosley was acting in, okay? And we're in the part of the production where an actor tends to get antsy and say, I'm in control of this. Some actors tend to do that, okay? And you have to know how to cool them out, because they realize if they were to not do what is asked of them, this film would never finish. Okay, that's logic 101, right?
Yes.
So Dad had to take Roger for a ride on the horse. So both of them took off up the road to discuss his behavior. Matter of fact, they had assigned me his bodyguard. That's how bad. I was his bodyguard because a lot of the crew were going to kill him, okay? And because he was acting stupid, he acting arrogant. You know, they tend to go off like that. Some of them, not all, of course. But that was something in his behavior that was going on. So Dad took him for a ride, and he came back by himself. And that's when I captured that shot of him coming back from that discussion they had on horseback. So he came back, I took the photograph. Roger came back right after him.
Was he crying?
And said, hey, how you doing? Everything, his whole attitude was 100% different for the better, okay?
Yeah.
So I walk over to the old man a little later, and I said, I know you and Roger went for a ride. What did you say to him to get him to act, in a good nature? He turned to me and he says, I told him if he didn't improve his behavior, that I was going to kill him. Okay. And I said, I understand. But that's the old man. That's the way he was. He didn't take no bullshit. Okay? And Roger finished the movie very nicely. He was friends with the crew. He did a fantastic job. His acting in that, you got to see Leadbelly.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I've read the book.
Right.
In fact, Marcia and I met in 2020-ish, and we were introduced by a childhood friend of mine, Mr. Johnson, Loveless Johnson III, and that's how we met. But I had plenty of time to research during the pandemic, which I'm very grateful for. So I got to immerse myself in that. And I just love this story because growing up as Gordon's son, I'm sure you've seen the same look that he gave Mr. Mosley and on this talk. But it's really of reverence and respect. And speaking of that, I have so much respect for you and your story, and I wish we should talk some more at do some other discussions. But I appreciate you sharing a lot about yourself, and I can't wait to spread that information around as well and show this photo.
That story of Leadbelly, for example, should just keep that between ourselves.
Okay, I did not record this.
No, I mean, I hear you. No, go ahead and use it. The thing about it is his behavior was so bad that he had to take him for a ride, and of course he was sitting on that horse. If he didn't straighten up and fly right, he might have found himself on the ground. So, but after that, he straightened up and did a fantastic job.
I get it. I've been taken for a ride a couple times myself in my life, so I'm always trying to improve. But
I understand.
Marcia, McCoy, thank you so much for just always being generous with your knowledge and information and connections, and sharing a world that you've been definitely integrated with. And we talk a lot about is art separate than our lives? And I guess it's not. I think we're all, the three of us, we are going to be intertwined with art for the rest of our lives in this way. Whatever you want to call it and however you want to categorize it, it is the way we breathe. And Marcia, I really appreciate you being here.
You're welcome. Thank you, Bobby, and thank you, David. I love you both. You're both awesome, and I'm thinking of starting a new clan called the Black Sheep Clan.
Yeah. David, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
I really enjoyed your interview, and I enjoyed talking with you. And as I said, if there's anything else you need to know, give me a ring. You have my phone number. And I'd be glad to help with anything you need to have.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This is Bobby Beals here at the Horseshoe Gallery at Bishop's Lodge in Santa Fe on Suki Pueblo. And I'm really excited to release this print coming soon. You'll be able to find it at bobbybeals.com, BOBBYBEALS.com. And I'm going to post some behind the scenes on Instagram and TikTok at Bobby Beals Presents. This is Bobby Beals Presents, David Parks and Marcia McCoy at the Horseshoe Gallery. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Have an awesome day.